Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. It's so wonderful to see so many friends and colleagues on the line today. I'm going to give just a short introduction to this series and the Women in Water Diplomacy Network for those of you who are joining us maybe for the first time. So, this is a series of webinars, the Global Water Dialogue series. This webinar series is covering key thematic aspects of water diplomacy on a quarterly basis across this year. Earlier this year, we had a fantastic session with IHE and AMCOW focused on our shared water visions. What can our water visions do to motivate our collective actions? And today we're so pleased to convene the second webinar in the series this year, focused on leadership, knowledge systems, and Indigenous approaches to water cooperation. Our series also serves to mark key days of importance to our community. So our first session this year was on International Women's Day. Today we're marking Women in Diplomacy Day. And the third session in this series will be marking International Day of Peace. That one is open for registration on September 23rd. And our fourth session this year will be on nature-based solutions in the context of water diplomacy. And that will be in October, and the registration will open soon. Please, next slide, Aline. For those of you who are getting to know the network, this is a community that has come together and evolved over time. Our roots are in the Nile Basin since 2017. It's coming up on 10 years. Our second sister network was established in 2021 in Central Asia, Afghanistan. Our global strategy is really what binds us all together. That we launched in 2022. And the strategy is really an invitation to communities, experts, allies around the world to join and support this collective mission of improving gender equality in transboundary waters with direct implications for peace and security. And when the global strategy was launched, it's been a really fantastic journey welcoming new communities from different regions into our global network, including in North America, the South Caucasus, Southern Africa, and elsewhere. So really thank you to all of you who make our community what it is today. Next slide, please, Elaine. This is just an image of our strategy. Today's activity is a knowledge sharing, experience exchanging event and is rooted in Pillar 2 of our global strategy, which aims to foster peer-to-peer knowledge exchange and learning. So these type of online learning activities are really critical to fostering exchange and connectivity across our community on critical subjects of water diplomacy. But the network is also engaged in other types of activities as well, including empowerment activities, specifically with regards to our active engagement in the Stronger Together coalition of women-led water networks, research cooperation, and very actively these days, collective engagement in global water policy dialogues, including the upcoming UN Water Conference, which I'll mention in a moment. Aline, our community is led by a fantastic global expert leadership council from all over the world who support our community in prioritizing activities and driving our strategy and mission. And a huge thank you to this council of leaders who, some of whom we'll be hearing from today. Our community is a constant evolution. So with these roots in the Nile Basin and Central Asia and kind of slowly establishing connections and communities in countries around the world, we've also grown in numbers and in geography, and we're really proud of how our community continues to evolve and take shape. And again, it's all because of the deep commitments across our membership. Members, for those who are interested, are simply those who have given time and energy into our community, with members having engaged in at least three events, including one in-person engagement. So there's lots of opportunities for you to, take a more active role in our community if that's something you're interested in. Just join events like this and others that you have opportunity to join. Next slide, please. Some of the recent activities, and I'm going to go really quick here because we're already going to get behind, but I want to highlight some of the amazing works that have been done by network members and our partners around the world in just the last 3-month period. So since our last online session, which was on International Women's Day in March, we've had almost 10, I believe, engagements. We've had a webinar with the University of Arizona's Water Resources Research Center on research cooperation. The Central Asia community had a fantastic online event marking World Water Day. I had the opportunity to speak on behalf of the network at the UN's World Water Day event here in New York. We had a fantastic lunch come together through the active support of network members in Turkey during the Istanbul International Water Forum conference. We had a fantastic online event with the Georgetown Institute of Women, Peace and Security and other partners. There was a great OSCE-supported webinar putting focus on the Water for People theme, preparing network members from Central Asia to be actively involved in those dialogues. We had a huge engagement, really, in partnership with UNU, OSCE, CAREC, Blue Peace, and others in Dushanbe. It was amazing to watch from afar. Including a really warmly received evening dinner reception honoring the network and the good works of amazing partners in our community. We had a very well-attended webinar earlier this month on the recently released UNU Water Bankruptcy Report hosted by the University of Arizona, and a super fun in-person meetup in Ottawa hosted by council members Fuman and Ambika and others that was on the side of the 4th Environmental Peacebuilding Conference. If all of this sounds really exciting and not to be missed, we have some upcoming events. We'll be having a meetup here in New York alongside the High Level Political Forum at the UN. Our meetup will be in the evening of July 6th. We'd love to see any of you there, or if you have colleagues that might be attending or in town, please send them our way. Same for Stockholm. We'll be having an informal meetup on the side of World Water Week on the Sunday of World Water Week. We'll be having dinner together that evening. Please sign up if you're attending the week. And final announcements from me for next slide. This is the registration for the next session of this webinar series. So the 3rd of 2026, we're going to be focusing on mining issues. What are the intersection issues of women, peace, and security around mining? Many of our network members, community members have more and more been asked for insights and expert opinion on impacts of mining on shared water resources. And this session, we're hoping to bring out some great knowledge resources around this theme. And finally, we'll be gathered in Abu Dhabi at the end of this year on December 7th. So if you are planning on attending the UN Water Conference in person, please register to join the Abu Dhabi Water Diplomacy Symposium. Our symposium will be the day before the UN Water Conference, as we did the day before the UN Water Conference preparatory meeting in Dakar earlier this year and in advance of the 2023 UN Water Conference. We'll also be applying for official side events and other activities across the program. If you are attending, please let us know, register. We won't have resources to support, financial resources to support network member participation, but we can support you in other ways, like maybe an invitation, or so reach out and let us know. And I believe that's all for me. So, with great pleasure, I'd like to kick off our Women in Diplomacy Day celebrations by welcoming three dear council members, our co-chairs of the Global Leadership Council, to speak to us today on the theme of Women in Diplomacy Day. I'll note we've been celebrating this event since it was created some 4 years ago, and we're so grateful that this event, this day, internationally recognized day, elevates voices of women leaders in diplomacy, and we can bring that theme into our community as well. So um, uh, I think we can put this slide down and I'll hand the floor over to Dr. Zodwa Dlamini, who will be kicking us off. Dr. Zodwa has been with our community since day one in the Nile, supporting that first community's launch. Zodwa, we're so indebted to you. Thank you for being with us here on Women in Diplomacy Day. Over to you. You are muted though.
Ready?
Sounds
Uh,
great. Thank you, Zodwa.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Good day, everyone, and good evening, good morning, and good afternoon to everyone who has joined us today. Today is one of those important days that we celebrate with some kind of humility and reverence, while we also acknowledge where we come from and what we have achieved. And it's very, very important that we do this on this very important day, International Women, Women in Diplomacy. So this for us is very, very important. And you know how it is with women. A lot of times we do not even want to acknowledge our achievements. We are so bashful about that. And it's only when people start saying, hey, so and so, this is what we have done, and then we acknowledge that. And so on this very day, I also want to highlight, what I usually say, that when we go to meetings, sometimes we do not even find the seat around the table. And when that happens, I usually say, bring your own, seat, or just bring your own floor mat or whatever. And there are two sisters that I do want to acknowledge and to send a shout out to, and that is Miss Euphrasia. Euphrasia Lubeka and Dr. Letitia Akun, and these are women who have just done something amazing on their own. They did not, want to wait for somebody to do something for them. Perhaps from seeing how women have been discriminated, how women, even when they have done very, very well, had not been acknowledged. But these two women decided that this is on our shoulders. Let us make sure that we acknowledge the women of Africa who have done exceptionally well in the sector of water and sanitation. For that, I want to, say to all of you, if we could clap our hands, and whoever sees them, anywhere, do remember what these women have done for the women of Africa. So having said that, they established what we call the first African Women in WASH Awards. That was in February. And we thought, that they had done themselves, so good. But, they came up again with another one, which was 100 African women leading Africa's water and sanitation future. So for me, I want to say how proud for what they have done, but they also make me proud as an African woman to see women who also ensure that the flag flies very, very high for those who have dedicated themselves in this sector. And then within our own community, we have women who have done very, very well, who were also acknowledged. So for that, in the 100, women that have been 100 women leading Africa's water and sanitation future, that those in our community are Miss Bokhadi Matangwana. She's from Botswana. We know she's one of the trailblazers when it comes to water and sanitation, but also when it comes to governance and transboundary, water services. That is who she is, and we have her today. So thank you very much, Mebokhadi, for your exceptional work in this sector. The second one is Dr. Florence Odongo, and then she's in Uganda. And we know that Dr. Florence, she was one of those women who have also done very, very well. And also she served, she's in water equity, governance, and regional diplomacy. And then we know what she has done for the Nile, community. For that, we also want to acknowledge her and thank her immensely. We have also our very good sister Miss Tracy Molefe from Botswana. Tracy also is known for the work and tenacity within the water sector and also transboundary water sector. And she's currently also in Botswana working for the Department of Water in Botswana. And the next one is my dearest sister, Dr. Muna Musnad from Sudan. She's currently in the UAE, and she's one of the trailblazers. This is one woman that we can say, despite everything that we can think of, the travesty, the wars could never stop her. And we want to acknowledge all your achievement and say nothing can ever stop the will of the women when they set themselves to do something. Thank you very much. And the next one here is our dear former, Muna was also the very first council member of the Women in Water Diplomacy in the Nile. And we want to acknowledge her. And now Miss Nompumelelo Njali Mota from Eswatini, and one of the specialists also when it comes to WASH. And she was also one of the members of the Leadership Council for Women in Water Diplomacy in the Nile. So we want to thank them for their achievement and also for that recognition. The last one, and this one, and I'm sure it's going to shock her because you know how women are. As I already said, women are very bashful when it comes to telling people what they have achieved. And Dr. Corinne Schuster Wallace from the University of Saskatchewan in Canada. She has also done very well, and she won the Women of Distinction Awards in Science. And we want to also acknowledge her and say, thank you very much, women, for all their achievement, for all that you have done, for us to continue to say, to whoever is blocking our way, to say, these are the women who have been acknowledged for all the work that they have done. For me, I just want to say thank you very much, and know who your leaders are. Let us not, be stingy with the accolades. Let us always ensure that we do not dim the lights for those that are doing well in our community. Having said that, I want to say thank you very much. And now I am passing on this, baton to Mebokhadi Matangwana. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Sis Zoda. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Still continuing on the recognition by these phenomenal women. And this time around, we are going to be recognizing Bethlehem Mengistu from Ethiopia. under the category of the winner, policy and advocacy trailblazer category. She's an executive director of Agenda for Change. Bethlehem has championed policy reforms and strengthened governance systems in the WASH sector. Her work emphasizes moving beyond short-term projects towards sustainable government-led service delivery. This is something that is unique, and the key message under her portfolio is that sustainable WASH services are delivered by strong institutions and inclusive governance, not parallel projects. And her achievements include supporting national policy reforms, strengthening local government capacity, and promoting inclusive access to WASH services. And uh, also, this recognition goes to Dr. Zodwa Dlamini from South Africa, one of our co-chairs. She's the first runner-up under the Lifetime Achievement Award. Dr. Dlamini, as most of you might know, was recognized for decades of leadership in water governance, transboundary water cooperation, and institutional development across Southern Africa. Her work has really helped strengthen regional collaboration, improve water security, and advance inclusive governments. Her key message is that transboundary water management demands more than engineering. It demands trust, equity, and long-term vision. And her career demonstrates how strong institutions, diplomacy, and social commitment are essential for sustainable water security. Last but not least, in this category, we have Heidi Tori Guini from Mali. She's the winner in Rising Star Award. Hadi was recognized as a young leader driving innovation, youth engagement, and climate-conscious approaches in WASH sector. Through AFRAS and other initiatives, she has empowered young professionals and communities to participate in water governance and evidence-based decision-making. Her key message being youth are not peripheral actors in the sector. They are architects of resilient, equitable, and climate-conscious water futures. Her work demonstrates the importance of youth leadership in addressing Africa's future water challenges. So the booklet that they wrote has a central message that Africa water future not only depends on infrastructure and engineering, but also on inclusive leadership, strong institutions, collaboration, and empowered women leaders. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I think we need to give that round of applause for these phenomenal women. And I pass the baton to Guldan to then move on with the recognitions. I submit.
Thank you very much, Bogati. Let's one more time send our claps to these great achievements. Colleagues, I want to start with that one of the greatest strengths of this network is incredible community of women and partners who continue to advance water cooperation, diplomacy, research, policy, and leadership in so many different contexts around the world. And today we are mark already Women in Diplomacy Day. And we want to take a moment, not only celebrate individual achievements, but also recognize the collective impact that our members are making across the regions, institutions, generations, countries. It's really amazing achievements. And every achievement represents countless hours of dedication, learning, collaboration, and service. And together, they're strengthening our shared vision for women, water, peace, and security. And today's recognition segments already was divided for 3 parts, and I want to
Gulzan is frozen for me. Others? Yes.
Yeah, the same.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
frozen.
I'll try
Yeah,
to. Oh, here
while
she is. You're
acknowledging,
back. You were frozen, dear. Try again.
ah, when you lost me, ladies.
Really, just a moment
Okay,
ago. Yeah, I mean, about the
okay.
collective
Uh, as
impacts.
agreed, uh, as agreed, I will recognize individuals at highlight level today, but while acknowledging that many have extensive accomplishments that cannot be fully captured.
Oh, that's a shame. It seems like Gozan is having connection problems. But please, we had so many great submissions from Central Asia and elsewhere in our survey asking for highlights, and lots of
Convenient.
them. Okay, Gozan, you're
I
having
will
some
be
connection.
very short, Elizabeth.
Please.
Um, yeah. Of Farida for presenting her gender responsive for joining the Women Diplomacy Network and strengthening her engagement through regional capacity building and international exchange. Elita Banda for being selected as part of Delphi Young Water Diplomacy Cohort for 2026. Oygul Usmanov for her publishing Water Heritage of Central Asia, while for present and future generations, contributing to the preservation and promotion of the regional water knowledge. Dr. Elina Bakradze for her ongoing leadership, research excellence, and recognition for her contribution to science education. Gulnar Aliyeva for strengthening the regional cooperation professional exchange through the international engagement collaboration. Fuman Foro for advancing important conversation on gender, water conflict, and cooperation and achieving her professional engineering designation. And in the last, I want to highlight Aziza Burhanova. She's a very young leadership in regional research and gender and water gardens for her mentoring, supporting the next generation of professionals. I want to highlight in the last every promotion, publication, research project, policy contribution, mentorship efforts, award, an act of any leadership contribute is stronger and more connected to network of women working toward more cooperative and sustainable water futures. And I want to say that we are warmly invite everyone to share additional accomplishments, recognitions, publications, appointments. Sometimes it's really hard to share what you have on your plate, but we would love to celebrate them with you and ensure they become part of our collective story. To everyone recognized today and all our members of this work, thank you for your leadership, your commitment and positive impact you continue to make in our communities and beyond. Congratulations and thank you. Now I would like to hand the floor back to Elizabeth. Sorry if it was long, but I really want to be like highlight everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gozan. I'm sorry I interrupted. You were a little frozen there, but it came through at the end. I'm so happy. Um, we're gonna take that was just such a celebration and something we can build on, and a huge shout out to all those people that are, putting effort to recognize women's achievement in our sector. It's so well deserved, and those efforts are seen by us all. So thank you. We're going to do a screenshot now and then transition into our focused experience exchange discussion. Um, if you want to, we typically would do like a photo collage of people with their beautiful pictures. It's good to see faces coming through. Please turn on your cameras, and I'll ask my colleague Batima to take some screenshots of our smiles while Yolanda and our panelists get set up. Wow, so good to see all your beautiful faces. We'll give Fatima another moment here to set up our screenshot. Thank you for joining, everyone. I see so many lovely friends and colleagues. Fatima, you tell us when we're free. Hey, Vesa. Oh, Jane may be winning the earliest award now that I see. Wonderful. Happy Women in Diplomacy Day to you all. Fatima, are we in the clear?
I think I think we're done. Yes. Thank you,
Okay,
everyone.
wonderful.
Great smiles.
Thank you, everyone. So now it's my pleasure to transition into our experience exchange discussion facilitated by Dr. Yolanda Lopez. And Dr. Yolanda, as our earlier speakers, is also a member of our Global Leadership Council. And, after these opening remarks from our co-chairs, I just want to thank our council members once again for giving their expertise and time to help our community grow in so many ways. And likewise to Yolanda for convening this discussion on leadership, knowledge, Indigenous-led water diplomacy. We really want to unpack some of these issues here today, and we have a fantastic trio of amazing leaders to help guide our conversation. Dr. Yolanda Lopez Maldonado, no, close, correct, hey, a multifaceted, amazing expert, friend, and leader. Founder of the Indigenous Science organization and a perfect facilitator for our discussion on Indigenous-led water diplomacy. Aluki Kotierk is a member of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. Many of you may have heard from her recently in some of the UN Water Conference discussions, and we're thrilled to bring her perspective into our experience exchange discussion today. And finally, Darnella, who is also a dear network member and partner from the Indigenous Women's Leadership Network. And Yolanda, I realize I've accidentally introduced them a little bit, so you're going to do it again. So over to you, Yolanda, and thank you for facilitating this discussions today.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, and I'm happy that this is more like a conversation, so no rush because you introduced our amazing panelists. So I'm very happy to introduce them again in a minute. Welcome again to this second Global Water Dialogue series. And today is very important and a very special day for us because, as you know, we are celebrating Indigenous Diplomacy Day as well. Not only International Women in Diplomacy Day, but we would like to honor and to acknowledge all those women working on diplomatic practices. And first, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians and caretakers of the land where all you came from, and invite and recognize sorry, our Indigenous kin and elders, past and present, across all the regions. Today, it's my great honor to have with me my esteemed colleagues, Madame Aluki Kotierk. I hope I pronounced it well. She's the chair of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. She has worked and has tremendous experience working on different organizations in Canada, Inuit organizations, and she has held several senior management positions in the government of Nunavut and the Office of the Language Commissioner. She has also held the role of Director of Inuit Employment and Training for NTI, and she has sworn in as the 8th President of Nunavut, Tungabik Incorporated. She has focused mainly on empowerment, Inuit language and culture revitalization, collective healing, and Inuit identity. I can say more about her. She's an amazing woman, which I had the opportunity to meet in Dakar a few months ago, and we had a great experience there. So I would like to welcome her. Also, we have today Madame Darnella Melancon. She's a longtime advocate of justice. She is enrolled member of the 4th Yuma Quechan Indian tribe located within the boundaries of California and Arizona, bordering Baja California, Mexico, and the lower Colorado River Basin. And she has a long story and experience of public and community service, including 2 terms as an elected tribal council member, coordinator for her tribe's Stop Violence Against Indian Woman Program, a member of Community Health Services, and also she has served as a commissioner of the Quechuan Housing Authority Board. She also has an amazing experience patrolling as a surgeon with over 21 years of experience in organization development, risk management, and so on and so forth. So it's very impressive how these colleagues are really moving forward and bringing indigenous diplomacy into international table of discussions on water issues. So before to move to our questions, I don't know if we can share the screen with some of the guiding questions for our panelists. So today, we have a lot of important topics to discuss, but I would like to open up the discussion by sharing with you like how to frame this conversation. And I would like to ask as an opening question, we will open the floor to you as well, so you can ask questions on the chat or maybe raising your hand. So the first question I would like to bring and to hear from our panelists is, what practices can support meaningful listening, trust building, and long-term cooperation as part of the Women in Day on Diplomacy? So I don't know if Aluki or Daniela can, I don't know, comment on or give us at least some opening remarks on this.
Hi, Yolanda. So if you don't mind, I think I'll provide broad remarks first before we start getting into the questions. Are you okay with that?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, okay. Tavausi, greetings, everyone, and dear Yolanda, thank you so much for the kind introduction. I'm so pleased to have been invited to participate in this dialogue. Although many of you may already be aware of this, as chair, I think it is important for me to start off by explaining that the Permanent Forum is an advisory body of the Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, and it is mandated to provide expert advice on matters concerning Indigenous peoples, promote coordination across the UN system, and follow up on the implementation on the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, otherwise known as UNDRIP. The forum is a unique global platform that brings together Indigenous peoples from the 7 sociocultural regions, member states, and UN entities to advance collective understanding and action. In this context, and for the purpose of this discussion, I thought it would be appropriate to start off by reading Article 25 of the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which makes reference to waters. It reads, Indigenous peoples have the right to maintain and strengthen their distinctive spiritual relationship with their traditionally owned or otherwise occupied and used lands, territories, waters, and coastal seas, and other resources, and to uphold their responsibilities for future generations in this regard. I would like to highlight 3 points from this article. Distinctive spiritual relationship. From this, you are left with an understanding that there is a spiritual relationship with water. There is an understanding that there is an interconnectedness. It is life-giving. It is not solely a resource. Traditionally owned or otherwise occupied and used. There is a distinction about owning and occupying and using waters. I think it gives space to be able to get a glimpse of the worldview of many Indigenous peoples who view water as ownerless. Responsibilities to future generations. There is an intergenerational responsibility and recognition that the interconnectedness is also through time with other generations. Clearly, having a spiritual relationship with water, not owning water, knowing that there is an interconnectedness presently and throughout time with water, and the need to uphold responsibilities to future generations would have an impact on the approach undertaken for water governance. As a way to further the discussion on water governance approaches, I want to highlight 2 points. Inuit, which I am an Inuk, Inuit, like many other Indigenous peoples in each of the 7 socio-cultural regions of the globe, are international peoples. Their homelands transcend state borders. They have had historically and continue to maintain currently relationships across borders. Many Indigenous peoples have governance structures and institutional mechanisms, not unlike the Women in Water Diplomacy Network, already in place to facilitate these relationships. The Inuit Women's Summit Declaration, an outcome of the first Inuit Women's Summit that was held in October 2025, expressed how the delegates collectively felt, and I quote, determined to continue to and strengthen the cross-border cooperation, support, and consultation between Inuit women, including between and within each region and beyond Inuit homelands. Cooperation is built on relationships that are nurtured. There are many different knowledge systems. Science is a knowledge system. It is not the knowledge system. Indigenous peoples' knowledge systems have a rich contribution to make and need to be respected. Finally, I want to end by sharing a relevant excerpt from the report coming out of the most recent session of the Permanent Forum that was held at the end of April. It is found in paragraph 96, and it reads, "The Permanent Forum notes with appreciation the preparatory work towards the 2026 United Nations Water Conference to accelerate the implementation of Sustainable Development Goal 6, ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all, and emphasizes the importance of ensuring the full and effective participation of Indigenous peoples in discussions around water governance. Moving forward, each of us can reflect on how we can support and ensure the full and effective participation of Indigenous peoples in discussions around water governance. Indigenous peoples must be engaged as rights holders and partners, not as stakeholders invited only to comment on decisions that have already been taken. Mechanisms must provide formal avenues for Indigenous peoples to contribute. When we come across draft documentation being considered, review with the eye of ensuring Indigenous peoples are meaningfully included. In closing, I share that the Permanent Forum will convene a closed meeting at the next session for Indigenous women girls to share experiences and identify actions to address gaps in implementing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And although it is not specific to water, it is specific to Indigenous women and girls and their views on the implementation of UNDRIP, including Article 25 that I started my remarks with. Thank you. Huyanami.
Thank you very much, Aluki. This is very important because it established some of the first topics for our next part of the session, in which we will have this conversation with the attendees of this webinar. So I don't know if Darnella, you would like to bring some opening remarks. We would like also to hear from you, from your experience, and perhaps after that we can proceed with some of the questions. Would you like to?
Yes. Yes, of course. And thank you for having me. It's wonderful to greet you from Fort Yuma, Quechan Nation, which is a desert region. And it's important to say that because I was raised here on this land. And when you live in the desert, you're very aware of the need for water and the importance of water. So being here today, I not only bring my voice, but I bring the voice of my community, past and present, and also the future. So the Quechan Nation, we have a long history of maintaining this land, and we are in the lower Colorado River Basin. And that was our history. So I just want to share a little bit about Indigenous diplomacy being trust-based. And that is a foundation for how we build relationships and historically for Quechan. So as a Quechan woman being raised on this land, it's important for me to share that all Indigenous people, especially in North America, for Native Americans, we have lived experience. So growing up, I remember what the river used to look like. And I see the river today. I see the results of over extraction. I see the results of climate change and a lack of care and concern for the river. So we fought for the river, we defended the river, and we see the river as life, our source of life. This is when we relocated as Quechan people, we settled here in the lower Colorado River Basin, and we needed water, not just for agriculture, but to take care of our animals and to build our infrastructure for our community, which still exists today. So we resisted those who would remove us from our position as stewards. And that is important because most of the relationships today are built around ownership. And as a Quechan woman, as a Native, as an Indigenous woman, we do not look at ownership as the primary source for responsibility. We look at stewardship, to care for the land and the resources and to see them as part of our relations, not just a resource to control. So in closing on this remark, I just want to remind everyone that diplomacy for us is rooted in that responsibility for sustainability and to care for the water. So I'll close with that on that remark, but just to remind everyone that when you think about what could be done and with relationships, that it's built on trust and respect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Darnella. I really appreciate your words. Perhaps we can now that we have an overall perspective of you and the work you do, we can continue our discussion and emphasizing the role of Indigenous women in carrying responsibility for water care, the daily collection, the transmission of water knowledge across generations, the protection of water bodies, for example. And this lived experience combined with the leadership in community governance is very important and indispensable for water diplomacy. And perhaps with that idea, we can move on with the next part of this conversation, centering Indigenous women as water diplomats from local, national, regional, and international level as well. And perhaps we can also, I don't know if we can open the chat as well for questions, so we can receive as well input from the attendees of this session. So from your perspective, what practices can support meaningful listening, trust building, and long-term cooperation in water diplomacy? So if you have any thoughts on some of the questions as well that were shared previously, would you like to start, Aluki?
Sure. Thank you so much, Yolanda. I think for me, one of the practices I think that's very important is that there needs to be regularity, because often there's one-offs where Indigenous peoples, Indigenous women are asked to participate in something, but not in a meaningful engagement. And I think it's so important that there be meaningful engagement and not just an engagement. So I wanted to make that point. And I think in order to be able to achieve that, there needs to be commitment. And I think commitment comes in different forms. So there needs to be commitment of time, for instance. There needs to be commitment of financial resources. And I guess the context being that Indigenous peoples have often had difficult relationships and experiences with states. So there needs to be a commitment to build or rebuild a relationship. And that takes trust. And I really like what Darnella said in terms of that being a trust-based approach is really important because, of course, trust takes time. And so Indigenous people need the time in advance to be able to participate and be fully engaged so that they're well informed and able to provide meaningful information or input into any process. There needs to be commitment for financial resources so that Indigenous peoples are able to participate fully in these different processes. And I think by making those commitments, the solutions will be better. They'll be richer because they will include Indigenous people's views and perspectives. And it will make sure that it includes the views of Indigenous women and the lived experience that they're able to contribute. So I think really specifically, I know there was a comment made earlier about the upcoming 2026 UN Water Conference. And so in preparation for that, for the lead up for that, I think people can make those kind of conscious decisions about how do we make space, how do we provide and support Indigenous people's participation in such important conferences. And sometimes it's important to make sure that there's Indigenous peoples are present in the main panel discussion, for instance, rather than having them only in a side event that participants may choose not to attend, you know? And so I think thinking about how do we create the space for Indigenous people's voices, Indigenous women's voices to be heard is really important. And there are practical ways to do that.
Yes, yes, totally agree with you. Also, perhaps to add to this, that since the second dialogue on water action declared in Dushanbe a few years ago, Indigenous peoples, even small, but we have had some presence on those discussions, and we were able to also engage in other events in New York at UN level. But the question here is, what will be the role for Indigenous peoples representatives in Abu Dhabi? Are we going to have a presence there? And as you mentioned, not only engagement, but meaningful engagement, active participation, and also recognition of Indigenous knowledge as multi-decadal observations that can help to guide policies for water protection. I will move to Darnella. Perhaps you can bring also some of your views on this that Aluki just mentioned, please.
Yes. So I do want to reiterate what Aluki said. As women, Indigenous women, we are not for show. And I want to emphasize that because that is sometimes the direction that conversations take. You know, we're at the table, but our voice is not recognized and it's not respected. And a lot of times, you know, especially with the trust responsibility, it's a box that's checked. Oh, we'll invite someone from a tribe to be present, but they're not listening. And when we bring our voice for our community, we are there. We're the front lines of the battle as women. Women have a lot of strength, a lot of power, and the intersections that we share in this responsibility are so important. So we have to remember to listen and build these relationships. Build a relationship with your resource, the life of the water. Be on scene with the water. Don't just talk about the water. Know where your bodies of water where your bodies of water are. Where are the sources of your water? What could pollute your water? Because if you're given the opportunity to be at the table, you need to know what's important. And as a Kwotsan woman, historically, we were the defenders of our villages. We were hefty women. We were big women. When the men were out and they were out hunting and fighting, we were defending the homeland. And this is what I feel very deeply when it comes to water. We have to defend her. She has been overly extracted and misused, misrepresented, and we get this great opportunity to step in as women and stand together globally and do what we can and remind people that they want to get involved with this building of coalition. This is what alliances look like. Building relationship with Indigenous people who have been defenders of homelands and resources since time immemorial. And that's what's important. So I just want to say, yes, again, we're not for show. We're not to show up and be in a flyer and then you're looking around and you're trying to find words that connect to, like, for example, the Colorado River. And for myself, I remind myself, sometimes we're far removed from the resources we defend because we can turn the tap on, we can flush the toilet, we go everywhere and we forget that this is a living, life-giving source for us. And without it, we won't be here. We won't make it. And so just to stay focused on that and to remember that this is a shared relationship. So go out to the body waters today, wherever you are, touch the water, remind it, speak to it, tell the water you're going to defend her and build those relationships. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Darnella. We have received a few questions over the chat, but also in our WhatsApp channel. And I would like to start with questions, so feel free to answer if you feel comfortable with. So the first is from Marianne and John. She shared this question. In my research in the groundnut basin of Senegal, I have observed that local climate change adaptation strategies rely heavily on community-based knowledge. In your view, how can international institutions better integrate these knowledge systems into water cooperation frameworks and water diplomacy processes? So any one of you can give us a point on that.
I'm just going to say, if you don't mind, Darnella, I'm just going to jump in and say that one of the things I was thinking about in terms of Indigenous people's knowledge is that often it's quite local in terms of our environment. So Indigenous peoples in the Arctic region might have specific knowledge based on the environment that includes ice, whereas it might be a little bit different than Indigenous peoples in the Andean mountains or Indigenous peoples in the Sahara, for instance, right? So I think as international organizations, one of the things I realized, I think, is that it's important to kind of think of principles, of engagement. How do you work with Indigenous peoples? Because the knowledge might be a bit different. So you might have principles on how you engage with the relationship to ensure that Indigenous people's knowledge is included and is used in the design or approach of how to work through water management in that specific area. But that it might differ depending where you are in the world. So I would suggest that as international organizations, it might be best to kind of have principles that you outline. And then you know that there's no cookie cutter approach to it. You have to actually have those relationships with Indigenous peoples in order for the approach to be meaningful and to incorporate the climate change impacts of that specific region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aluki. And that's you are totally right. I don't know, Daniel, if you want to comment on this, but we have a lot of questions. I have one specifically for you, so perhaps I will ask that another question to you so we can move on. So there is a question for you from Linda Jacobo. She would like to hear your perspective on something very specific. So she's from the Imperial Valley, and the data centers and their enormous water use have a real concern there. Has the Quechan community been consulted about the water plan for the data centers in Yuma? And what about the mining and lithium companies looking to establish operations in the Imperial Valley? So feel free to.
Yeah, I'll address that question, but clearly I'm here representing my partnership with Women in Water and Diplomacy, and as well as Indigenous Women's Leadership Network. So I'm not here speaking as leadership for the tribe per se. So those are discussions that I think can be addressed to our government. We do that's part of that's part of our relationship building as well. So just make sure you have make contact with those who are in leadership that actually will speak to those things. But overall, I really don't want to get into a discussion about data centers, because those are specific discussions that are being had in our governance level. So thank you for respecting that.
Thank you very much. I have another question. You can also, Aluki, or you can also answer this. So how can we bridge scientific knowledge, indigenous knowledge systems, and community-based expertise to design water governance policies that are effective, inclusive, and sustainable in the long term?
Thank you for that question. So I think there are examples of effective ways in which Indigenous people's knowledge is being used in addition to scientific approaches around the world. And so I'm just thinking about, because I'm from the Arctic region, how Inuit knowledge on ice has been used to identify with climate change the areas that might be thinning, and then science is able to use the scientific approach to confirm that, And so to me, I think there is a way to bridge that. And I think it's based on relationship. Again, everything is so importantly based on relationship. I think that having relationships and having the openness and not going into a community and saying, this is the information that we have and we know it's correct, but to ask and engage with people in that community, Indigenous peoples, Indigenous women. I think it's really important. And it, as I said earlier, it brings a richness to the story, to the understanding of that information. Because so much of what we experience as Indigenous peoples is not captured through science and is not part of the stories and our understanding of the world. And so when scientists come into our communities and they're able to tap into that richness, it makes it a better, richer experience for everyone. And I think you probably would agree with that, Yolanda, as an Indigenous woman who's a scientist, right?
Yes, I totally agree with you. And also very important to emphasize something that you just mentioned, that Indigenous knowledge has been there since time immemorial. So then mainstream science tries to validate our knowledge. But we need to change this into the idea and the fact that Indigenous knowledge systems, we don't need validation from another knowledge systems, since we have proved scientifically, we have scientific basis that our knowledge has been very effective, not only in conserving water resources, but also in protecting biodiversity, in thriving ecosystems. So I totally resonate with your your points. Well, we have been receiving a lot of questions. I would like to follow up on some of them. There is one question from Tahani, my dear colleague. How do you envisage institutionalize Indigenous knowledge in the water sector globally? So, for example, how is possible to share Indigenous knowledge worldwide? So perhaps, Daniela, you would like to bring something.
Yes, again, I'd like to speak to respect. There's a lot of work going into data sovereignty for tribes, and that's protecting our data. You know, a lot of grants and funding that tribes have utilized has required the use of our data, and our data is lost at times. It's misused. And so when we look at global presence and what that looks like, it's relationship building, you know, reminding yourself that if you want to be a partner, if you want to be a supporter of Indigenous people or tribes, or Kwatsan, you know, build the relationship first, because it's, you know, imagine yourself going to someone's home. You're not going to step in and say, oh, I want to redecorate, or here's some money, do this with that, do this. You're going to respect that homeland. You're going to respect that and value that. And so the data, we are recapturing our data. Some of the universities have native specific departments that are recapturing data, protecting our data, making sure our data is not misused. And a lot of times, I hate to say it, you know, data is gathered from tribes and used for grants, and the funding is not used for the tribe. You know, it's used elsewhere. And you know, we're rebuilding. We have knowledge bearers. We have, you know, the structure may not look the same, but it's there. Our infrastructure looks different, and culturally it's built through our language bearers and our culture and the respect and the value for water. So globally, you have to build these relationships to have a conversation. There are 575 federally recognized tribes in the United States alone, and many tribes who do not have federal recognition. And what does this mean? It means the difference between each tribe, not just geographically, but also by voice, by language, you know, by water resource. You know, our tribe has senior water rights, but the past relationship, even with the government, and how that relationship is presented, it changes. And a lot of this is not based on our lack of resources. It's based on the land around us and the cities and the municipalities and where they lack resources. We are, you know, although we have senior water rights, what does the allocation look like? So this is really important. Again, this is our data from our homeland. And so just build a relationship, get to know the communities where you are, especially with Kwatsan. We have a structure where we have a president, we have a vice president, we have council members, and we have cultural resource departments. We have environmental departments. So we have people out there doing the work. They are hands-on, but we're open to people building the relationships. I can't speak for everyone to say what that looks like, but know that it's there. Know that's where the value comes in. And this is where our data is. We're rebuilding it to capture it, to use it for our purposes, to be stewards of our land and our water. So thank you.
Thank you, Darnella. Okay, perhaps we have time for one more question, and then we can give the floor to my colleague Elizabeth. So one question from Petunia. She's interested on Indigenous knowledge in case where traditional water practices might conflict with modern water quality standards. How should decision makers balance cultural preservation with public health protection? Feel free to respond.
I'll jump in right away. Or do you want to jump in, Darnell?
I can comment
wait.
after you. I can comment after you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I was going to say that, I mean, I advocate for Indigenous people's rights. So of course, my view is that if you're going into a region with indigenous peoples and you're talking about water, I would err on siding with indigenous peoples and their views. But I also think that disagreements or things that are different views might be resolved because there's often a commonality. And I think it's built on relationship. And that's why it's so important to have the relationship. It's not enough for me to go into a community and say, hey, what are your views on that? And say, I have different views, and not take the time to understand why the views are that way, you know? And so I think over sometimes the world seems in such a rush to make conclusions rather than having a slow kind of existence where we're building a relationship and talking to each other and understanding each other. And I think it relates to what Darnella was saying in terms of respect. So I really think that today there might be a disagreement or a perception that there's a disagreement, but over time, as people nurture the relationship, you might get to a place where you're both in agreement. And I will say, as an example, in the Arctic, in the part of the Arctic where I live, our houses get trucked water services. So we have tanks in our homes that get water. And for many Inuit, I mean, it's drinkable water, but for many Inuit, it's not good enough. So we use it to wash dishes or for cooking or to bathe, but many Inuit actually go out to the glacier or to icebergs to actually get cleaner water sources, right? Fresher. They seem crisper, the water. I don't know how you would describe it. And so that's what Inuit would want to drink, you know? And so science says the water in our homes is good enough, yet our worldview is like, oh, we know there's better water out there, and we want the better water for our own drinking consumption, for our own consumption, right? So it's not, it's sometimes we have higher expectations or higher standards. The quality assurance might be higher, right? The other thing is that, if you don't mind, I saw there were questions about youth capacity, and I was thinking about how there's opportunities for participatory research. So Indigenous people who are youth can participate in the research, and we need to make space for that so that they're learning about water sources and Indigenous people's views on water. And I've seen examples of that that are very useful because they're focused on Indigenous people's research priorities. And I think that's really important, that when we go and make regulations or work on principles, we take an Indigenous people's centered approach. So we talk to Indigenous peoples and say, what are your priorities? And how do you want to move forward? What kind of resources, water resources are needed? How do we support the water for future generations? You know, those are the discussions that need to occur.
Wonderful. Thank you, Aluki. Darnella, would you like to jump in?
Yes, I just want to make sure we remember the different battlefields out there, you know. So I would like to, as we're moving to closing, I would like to say, know your battlefield and know the relationship of diplomacy based on the tribe, the indigenous nation, the people, and know and understand what the battle for water is. It's a continuum. You have to know your position, you have to know your tools, and if you're coming to build alliances and coalitions and partnerships, remember these relationships are based on lived experience primarily, and there's different types of data. So you know, when you show up a tribe, and you're there to help, or you want to build a relationship, be respectful and learn to listen. There's a lot of teaching, there's a lot of listening. That's what we're taught by our elders. Listen first. We have to listen. We listen to the water. We hear her. We hear her when she's not speaking, and we know what that looks like. We know what drought looks like. And we know the help we need. So you need to know what your tools are. Your voice is a tool to speak for those who cannot, including the water. So I hope this results in a call to action to reach out, build, connect, make your connections count, and assess your resources. Learn what you can bring to the table. And when you have those opportunities, mention them, share them, be open to discussions, break bread, sit down. Don't make it so formal. Sometimes it's just a conversation over coffee or lunch. Invite someone out. Know your local tribes. Know where your indigenous people are. Know their battles past and present, so you can stand in. And that's where the shared relationships come, with sharing data. It's for a purpose. It's not just to know, but it's to take responsibility in the shared relationship of protecting and guarding our water, because water is life. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniela, for your points, and also Luki for bringing very important issues to our conversation this morning in Mexico. We have more questions, but unfortunately, time is running very fast, and we have also some reflections from our colleague Corinne Schuster. But before moving to the last part of our event today, I would like to thank you both for bringing your perspective, for bringing your expertise into this conversation, and also to comment and to invite everyone to keep following our post in LinkedIn. If you have more questions, feel free to reach out, and we will be able to share your questions with our panelists by email, perhaps following. So yes, thank you very much again. And I would like to give the floor to my colleague Elizabeth, so she will continue with our last part of the session. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you, Yolanda, Aluki, Darnella, for sharing your valuable expertise and insights with our community today. I mean, I really feel like my Women in Diplomacy Day. I'm going to take your advice, Darnella, and be on the scene with water, and go visit my local water today, and keeping you all in my mind. I also really appreciated the thoughts on alliance building and coalition building and strengthening our priorities through shared approaches. This is just an hour and a half discussion today, a tip of an iceberg. There's so much more to learn. We'll be, as you said at the top of the meeting today, we'll be putting out a summary after action report, the recording. There will be an exit survey that's going to pop up on your screen when you try to leave us. Please take a moment to fill it out. It should just take a few minutes, but your insights and thoughts are really valuable to us. We take our monitoring, evaluation, and reflections from our community really seriously. There's also a question there asking what other themes you are interested in exploring together in our thematic seminar series. So take a moment to fill out the survey. It'll also be shared in an email follow-up, so you can't miss it. With that, I'd like to thank everyone once again for joining us today. Tremendous turnout. Your time is so valuable at all hours of the day, so thank you for being with us here today. And with that, I'll turn the floor over to Dr. Corinne Schuster-Wallace from the University of Saskatchewan, at the Global Water Security Institute, for some closing reflection. Thank you, Corinne.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, panelists. I'm joining you as a non-Indigenous immigrant to Canada from Wales. I'm here on Treaty 6 territory of the Cree, the Dakota, Nakota, Saulteaux, and Dene peoples, and traditional homeland of the Métis. And I appreciated the end of that panel discussion because I can pick up from there, because I am a community-based participatory researcher, and I do work with and for Indigenous communities in Canada, but also in sub-Saharan Africa. And so I just wanted to remind us that fundamentally water is life, and it has spirit and it gives life, but it also takes it away through floods, droughts, storms. And as we heard today, rights come with responsibilities, and this is something that I feel that non-Indigenous peoples, particularly in high-income countries, forget as part of our commodification of water. And Darnella, you summed it up with your comment on stewardship, not ownership. And I really challenge everybody when you're going down to the water and reflecting and thanking and showing your appreciation, remember the responsibilities that we have, the responsibilities for stewardship, and not just those rights that, as I say, we're so quick to claim sometimes. Research cooperation is one of the 5 pillars of the Women in Water Diplomacy global strategy. And so I also want to challenge us. We've heard very clearly about the different forms of evidence and knowledge. And one of the projects I've been working on, and this goes to Petunia's question, is our water good to drink? And this goes to what we heard, as Aluki said, that, water is different. We have a different standard. And so I think we need to remember that it's not either or, it's both. And again, finding those points of similarity. And so I'm working with the Quechua Territory government in the Northwest Territories, and we've actually talked with knowledge holders, we've talked with community members, and we've understood what water is good to drink. And a lot of that, I'm not going to talk about it, but a lot of it is visual and oral monitoring. And so we're actually setting up a parallel monitoring system around all my relations, the indicators for water good to drink, that goes alongside the lab-based water quality monitoring. Again, giving that power and sovereignty back to the Quechua territory communities. The co-development of research, you heard it very clearly, and being driven by community for community, and that data sovereignty. And this is really turning research from a university's perspective on its head. And so again, with the water good to drink, the majority of the funding actually went to the communities to manage the research. Co-analysis is another piece. So if you are engaging in research, then I'm not Indigenous. I don't have that local lived experience and knowledge. And so I can't analyze the data. I can't draw those findings. I can synthesize what I've been told and bring it back to the community, but really we need that co-analysis. And the youth, thank you for mentioning the youth, because that's a principle that I bring into all of my community-based research, is to have youth researchers alongside the university students. And so we're strengthening research capacity within the community, and actually many youth have gone and undertaken other surveys and other data collection methods for their community, on behalf of their community. And so again, that empowerment that needs to happen. And the co-development of training, because that training is part of the research. And so we've developed a joint high school university course that was co-developed with teachers and principals and land-based teaching within the communities. And so I want to kind of bring this all together and draw your attention to a water gathering statement, which I think brings together a lot of what was said today. And it was, I created space on the land for Métis, Inuit, and First Nation peoples who are involved in a large water research project across Canada called Global Water Futures. And the principles that came out really reflect a lot of what you've heard today. And it's about community wellness as the primary objective. observing and abiding by local protocols, the intellectual property, including the data belonging to the community, and the equitable support and funding for knowledge. And a lot of community members are doing research off the sides of their desks because they know it's so important. And for us in positions who are able to access funds for research, then we need to bring the community costs of research into whatever funding budgets that we're developing. And this all has to occur within the ethical space framework. Again, we heard about the finding those connections and then recognizing the differences. And so it's intentionally creating the space.
Excuse me,
to...
Corinne, can you
Sorry,
go a
yes?
little bit slower? The interpreters are struggling a bit, just a little bit slower. Thank you.
Okay, I can do that. So it's all occurring within this ethical space framework, intentionally creating the space to recognize the hidden cultural differences and values between our different worldviews. And Women in Water Diplomacy is fundamentally about increasing diverse voices and perspectives in water diplomacy. And so now we must also increase the diverse ways of knowing and our forms of evidence to inform water diplomacy and the equitable and sustainable water management. This is qualitative data, not just quantitative. It's traditional knowledge and Indigenous science. It's lived experience. And we need to actively hear and respect these forms of evidence. Unfortunately, this is not a new challenge. The majority group women in Dushanbe process have been bringing this to attention, and I know many other groups have been bringing this to attention. And so we need to be acting and not just talking, and we need to be creating the space for this co-developed, co-created research and respect for the different forms of evidence, as we've heard very, very clearly today. So with that, thanks to everyone who participated in today's conversation, but especially Aluka, Danella, and Yolanda, thank you for your insights. And I challenge everybody to take at least one of the action items that you've heard today and practice it in your water diplomacy moving forward. Thank you very much. Have a great day.